Dad's silent revenge.
She handed me a laminated sheet of paper the first time I tried to hold my own grandson. I still remember standing in the doorway of their ranch house in Warren, Michigan, a red brick place with white shutters that looked like every other house on Maple Street. I had a fishing tackle box tucked under my arm for 7-year-old Tyler, one of those green plastic ones with all the compartments. My daughter-in-law Carol took one look at it and slid this document across their granite kitchen counter like I was applying for a loan. The paper was actually laminated. She'd gone to Kinko's or somewhere and made it official. No unannounced visits, no bringing gifts without prior approval. No discussing financial matters with Timothy. No taking Tyler anywhere without written consent 48 hours in advance. I read it twice while standing there in their kitchen that smelled like vanilla candles and fresh coffee, then looked up at her with what I hoped was a calm face. "Just so we're all on the same page," she said, tapping the paper with her fingernail. She had on one of those manicures that probably cost more than I spend on groceries in a week. My son Timothy was leaning against their stainless steel refrigerator, studying his work boots like they were the most fascinating things in the world. The same boots I'd taught him to lace when he was Tyler's age. That was 2 years ago, and Tyler was 5 then. The tackle box I brought him that day ended up in their garage sale 6 months later. Still had the price sticker on it when I drove by and saw it sitting on a folding table next to a bunch of Carol's exercise equipment. My name is Vincent Morrison, but everybody calls me Vince. I'm 62 years old, spent 35 years at Ford's Dearborn plant, first on the line and then supervising. Started there when I was 27, fresh out of a short stint at community college studying automotive technology. Worked my way up the old-fashioned way, learning every job on the floor before they gave me a clipboard and a desk in the corner office with windows that looked out over the parking lot. I retired early when my wife Linda got her diagnosis. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The kind that doesn't mess around. 8 weeks from sitting in Dr. Martinez's office, hearing the words to standing next to her grave at Oakwood Cemetery on a cold Tuesday morning in March. Linda was 58. She was the kind of woman who kept birthday cards in a shoebox and actually sent them on time, made the best meatloaf in 3 counties, according to the church cookbook they put together every few years. Once drove through a January blizzard that shut down I-94 to bring chicken soup to our neighbor Mrs. Patterson when her husband was in the hospital with pneumonia. Linda loved Timothy with the fierce protectiveness that only mothers have used to say he was stubborn as a mule, but had a heart bigger than the Great Lakes. She was completely crazy about Tyler from the moment Timothy called us from the hospital, voice shaking with excitement, to tell us he'd arrived safe and sound at 3:47 in the morning. Linda insisted on driving over there in her bathrobe and slippers, couldn't wait until visiting hours. She used to tell me Tyler was God's way of giving her something beautiful to focus on during the chemotherapy treatments. Would sit in that recliner in our living room, the blue one with the worn armrests, holding him while he slept, and just watching his little chest go up and down. Said it was better medicine than anything they were pumping into her veins at the cancer center. After she died, I thought the hardest part would be coming home to that empty house on Elmwood Street, the one we'd bought in 1985 when Timothy was still in diapers. The silence in the kitchen where she used to hum while doing dishes, the way her coffee mug still sat in the same spot in the cabinet, even though I couldn't bring myself to use it. But I was wrong about what would be the hardest part. The hardest part turned out to be watching my family get managed away from me, one laminated rule at a time. It started even before Linda passed. Back when she was still fighting. Carol and Timothy had been married 6 years by then, met at some work conference when Tim was doing electrical work for the hotel where she was selling real estate to out-of-town buyers. Carol was organized. I'll give her that, had systems for everything. Color-coded calendars on the refrigerator, labeled storage bins in the garage, a different notebook for every aspect of their lives. I respected that about her initially. Some people need structure to feel secure, and there's nothing wrong with that. I didn't drop by without calling first, didn't offer advice they didn't ask for, tried to be the kind of father-in-law who stays in his lane and minds his own business. When they bought their place in Warren, that nice ranch with the 2-car garage and the postage stamp backyard, I gave them $45,000 as a gift. Most of what remained from my brother Eddie's life insurance when he died in that car accident on I-75. Eddie was 3 years older than me, never married, spent his life working construction and saving his money. When the lawyer called and told me I was his beneficiary, it felt like Eddie was still looking out for his little brother, even from wherever he'd gone. Tim needed help with his electrical contracting business. Needed a new work truck, some upgraded equipment, maybe a little cushion to get through the slow months. I didn't attach strings to that money. Didn't ask for a business plan or demand to see receipts. Family helps family, that's how Eddie and I were raised by our old man, who worked 30 years at River Rouge and never missed a day. What I didn't understand at the time was that in Carol's mind that $45,000 wasn't a gift from a father to his son. It was an investment in her household, and like any investor, she expected returns. She started calculating what my involvement was worth to her bottom line, and apparently she decided I needed better management. After Linda's funeral, I tried my best to stay connected to Tyler without getting in Carol and Tim's way. I'd call ahead before visiting, usually aiming for Saturday afternoons when Tim wasn't working. Kept my visits to 2 or 3 hours, long enough to really spend time with Tyler, but not so long that I'd wear out my welcome. I'd bring him little things. A book about trucks from the library book sale, a model airplane kit we could work on together. Sometimes just a Snickers bar from the gas station near my house, because Linda used to sneak him chocolate when Carol wasn't looking, and it felt like keeping a piece of her alive. Watching Tyler grow up felt like the most natural thing in the world. He had Linda's eyes, this serious gray-blue that would light up like Christmas morning when he got excited about something. And Lord, did that kid ask questions. Grandpa Vince, why do trucks have so many gears? How come some clouds are white and some are gray? Do you think Grandma Linda can see me from heaven? That boy could ask questions faster than I could think up answers, but I loved every single one. Linda used to say he got that curiosity from me, the way I'd always been poking around under the hood of cars or taking apart radios just to see how they worked. But every few months, something would shift in the household dynamics. It started small, the kind of changes you might not notice if you weren't paying attention. The Saturday visits began getting shorter. First, it was because Tyler had a play date, then because Carol had scheduled a house showing and needed the place to look presentation ready, then because Tyler needed his nap at exactly 2 p.m. and couldn't be disturbed. The 48-hour notice rule appeared sometime around Tyler's 6th birthday. Carol explained it as a courtesy thing, said it helped her plan better. Then I was asked not to park in their driveway because it looked unprofessional when her real estate clients drove by for appointments. Had to park on Maple Street, sometimes 3 houses down if the neighbors were having company. The food restrictions came next. Suddenly Tyler had all these dietary sensitivities I'd never heard about. No sugar after lunch, no artificial colors, no processed snacks. Carol handed me a typed list of approved foods, printed on her office letterhead like it was some kind of medical prescription. The Snickers bars I used to bring became contraband. One Saturday in October, I drove the 45 minutes from my house in Dearborn to their place in Warren, same as I'd been doing for months. It was one of those crisp fall days when the leaves are turning and the air smells like wood smoke from people's fireplaces. I'd brought Tyler a book about Michigan lighthouses, something I thought we could read together. Carol answered the door wearing workout clothes and that tight smile she reserves for difficult conversations. "Oh, Vince, this isn't really a good time." Tyler's exhausted from soccer practice, and I think he's coming down with something. I could hear Tyler in the living room, playing with his Lego trucks, making engine noises like any healthy 6-year-old. Didn't sound exhausted to me. "I drove all the way over," I said. "Maybe just for a few minutes?" She glanced back toward the living room, then at me. "I really think it's best if we reschedule. I'll have Tim call you." The door closed before I could respond, leaving me standing on their front porch with a lighthouse book under my arm and nowhere to go but back to my empty house. I mentioned it to Timothy the next time we talked. This was back when we still had regular phone conversations, usually on Wednesday evenings while he was driving home from whatever job site had been working. "She just likes things organized, Dad," he told me, and I could hear him eating something crunchy, probably one of those protein bars Carol bought in bulk from Costco. "You know how she is about schedules." I did know how she was about schedules. What I was starting to understand was that Timothy had stopped seeing the difference between being organized and being controlled. When your wife starts treating your father like a service appointment that can be canceled for convenience, that's not organization. That's something else entirely. The formal rule sheet showed up in my email about 8 months after Linda's funeral. It came with a subject line that read Family Visitation Guidelines and was signed Carol Morrison, real estate professional. Shed used her business letterhead, complete with her photo and contact information, like I was a potential homebuyer instead of Tyler's grandfather. The document was 2 pages long, single-spaced, and covered everything from visiting hours to gift protocols. Saturday afternoons only, 2-hour maximum duration. All gifts required advance approval via email, with a 48-hour response window for her review. No discussion of family financial matters in Tyler's presence. No photographs shared on social media platforms without written consent. No overnight visits without a minimum of 30 days advance notice and completion of her childcare questionnaire. At the bottom of the second page was a signature line with my name typed underneath, like I was agreeing to terms and conditions for a cell phone contract. I printed it out and read it 3 times, sitting at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee going cold in front of me. The same table where Linda and I used to sit every morning before work, her with the newspaper crossword and me with the sports section. I kept thinking she was going to walk in from the bedroom and ask me what had my face looking like I'd bitten into a lemon. I didn't sign it. Instead, I called Timothy and asked if we could meet for coffee. Neutral territory, somewhere we could talk without Carol hovering in the background, making that face she makes when she thinks conversation is heading in directions she can't control. "I've been meaning to call you anyway, Dad," he said. "We should probably catch up." We met at Tony's Diner on 8 Mile Road, one of those old-school places with red vinyl booths and waitresses who call everybody honey and remember how you like your coffee. The place had been there since the 1960s, looked like it hadn't changed the decorations since then either. Faded photos of Detroit sports teams on the wood-paneled walls. A jukebox in the corner that probably still had Motown records in it. Tim was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with his hands wrapped around a white ceramic mug. He had on his work clothes, jeans with plaster dust on the knees, and a flannel shirt that had seen better days. Looked tired in a way that went deeper than just physical exhaustion. I slid into the booth across from him, and Ruby, the waitress who'd been working there since my hair was still brown, poured me coffee without asking. "You boys want some pie? Got fresh apple today." "Just coffee for me, thanks," I said. Tim shook his head, staring into his mug like it held answers to questions he hadn't figured out how to ask yet. We made small talk for a few minutes. How his business was going, whether the Tigers had any chance of being decent next season, the usual safe topics fathers and sons fall back on when bigger conversations are lurking underneath. Then I pulled out the printed email and set it on the table between us. "Tim," I said, "what is this?" He looked down at the papers and I watched his face change. Not surprise, exactly. More like the expression of a man who's been dreading a conversation he knew was coming eventually. "Carol feels like the boundaries haven't been clear," he said, and it sounded like Head practiced that line. "She thinks it would be better for everyone if we had some structure." I asked him which boundaries it crossed. I'd been following every rule Shed given me. Called ahead every time. Parked on the street. Brought only approved snacks. Kept my visits to exactly 2 hours. I'd swallowed every instinct I had to just be a normal grandfather. He talked for a while about Carol's need for organization, about how my visits were sometimes stressful for Tyler. That puzzled me more than anything else, since Tyler always came running to the door when I showed up and usually cried when I had to leave. "Dad, I know this seems like a lot," he said, stirring sugar into coffee that was already sweet enough. "But Carol thinks if we're all following the same playbook, things will go smoother for everybody." I let him finish his explanation, then asked him the question that had been eating at me for months. "Tim, do you actually want me in Tyler's life?" "Of course I do, Dad. Yes." He looked genuinely hurt that I'd even asked. "You're his grandfather. You're important to him." But then came the word I'd been expecting. The but was that Carol had what she called a fair contribution plan to propose. If I wanted to maintain regular access to Tyler, she felt it was reasonable for me to help with his expenses. Not occasional gifts when I felt like it. A standing monthly payment of $650, transferred directly to an account she managed, as a condition of continued visitation rights. "She calls it a family support arrangement," Timothy said, finally looking up from his coffee. "Like, you get the benefit of spending time with Tyler, so you should contribute to the costs of raising him." I sat there in that vinyl booth, listening to my 38-year-old son explain why I'd need to pay $650 a month to see my own grandson. Like Tyler was a cable subscription I could upgrade or cancel depending on my budget. "And if I don't agree to this arrangement?" I asked. Tim shifted uncomfortably. She thinks maybe it would be better to take a break from regular visits until Tyler's older and can make his own decisions about relationships. Until he's older? Like I had unlimited time to wait around for my grandson to turn 18. Like I was guaranteed to be here in 11 years to collect on that promise. I told him I needed some time to think about it. He nodded like that was perfectly reasonable, like we'd been discussing lawn fertilizer instead of putting a price tag on family love. I drove home through the late afternoon traffic on I-94, the kind of slow crawl that gives you too much time to think. My house in Dearborn felt smaller when I walked in, like the walls had moved closer together while I was gone. I sat at my kitchen table, the same spot where Linda and I used to plan our days and argue about money and decide which relatives to visit on holidays. The coffee mug Shed used every morning was still in the cabinet above the sink. I'd never been able to bring myself to use it or put it away. It just sat there on the shelf like a bookmark, holding the place where our life together had stopped. I kept thinking about something my old shop steward at Ford used to say. When management starts changing the rules in the middle of the game, you better check what's in the books. Sal Kowalski had been fighting contract disputes for 25 years, and he taught me that problems usually leave paper trails. You just have to know where to look and how to ask the right questions. I had a business card tucked in my desk drawer, something my neighbor Barbara Stevens had given me after her son went through a complicated divorce. Gerald Patterson, family law attorney. Shed said he was the patient type who didn't get rattled when emotions ran high and money got tangled up with hurt feelings. I called Gerald Patterson the next morning, right after my first cup of coffee, and before I could talk myself out of it. His secretary put me through within 10 minutes, and I spent the next hour laying out the whole situation. The gift money, the escalating rules, the monthly payment demand, all of it. Gerald listened without interrupting, which I appreciated. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment, and I could hear him writing something down. "Mr. Morrison," he said finally, "I want you to do a few things before we meet in person. First, save every email, every text message, every document Carol has sent you. Print them out and put them in a folder. Second, write down the dates and details of every visit that was canceled or restricted. And third, I want you to talk to your accountant about that $45,000. I asked him why the accountant mattered. My taxes were straightforward. Pension, a little social security. Nothing complicated. Because gifts to family members can be treated differently under family law, depending on how they were given and documented. And before we do anything else, I'd like to understand exactly what financial relationship exists between you and your son's household." I'd been using the same accountant for 18 years. Nancy Coleman worked out of a small office above the hardware store on Michigan Avenue. Kept files like they were historical documents, everything organized and cross-referenced. If you needed a receipt from 2003, Nancy could find it in 5 minutes. I called her that same afternoon, told her what was happening, asked her to pull everything related to the $45,000 gift, bank transfers, correspondence, any documentation that showed how the money had moved and where it had ended up. "Give me a couple days, Vince," she said. "I'll need to request some additional records from the banks. Make sure I'm seeing the complete picture." What Nancy found was something I hadn't been paying attention to at the time. The $45,000 I'd given Tim and Carol hadn't all gone toward his truck and business equipment like Eve assumed. Nancy showed me a series of bank records, transfers that painted a picture I hadn't seen clearly before. About 6 months after I'd given them the money, roughly $18,000 had moved from Tim and Carol's joint checking account into a separate account that had been opened in Carol's name alone. The transfers happened in smaller amounts over the course of about a year. $4,500 here, $2,200 there, amounts that wouldn't necessarily catch attention if you weren't looking for patterns. But when you added it all up, it totaled exactly $18,000 of my brother Eddie's life insurance money sitting in an account Tim probably didn't know existed. Money that was supposed to help his business, being quietly moved into his wife's personal investment portfolio. I sat in Nancy's office for a long time after she showed me those bank records. The afternoon sun was slanting through her blinds, making patterns on the desk between us. I thought about Tim's face at Tony's diner, that careful expression like he was walking through a minefield. I wondered how much of what had been telling me was Carol's script, and how much he actually believed. I wondered if he knew about the account, decided he probably didn't. That made it worse somehow, not better. Gerald and Nancy worked together over the next 6 weeks. I didn't say a word to Tim or Carol during that time. I kept calling ahead for my Saturday visits, kept following every rule on that laminated sheet, kept showing up on time with my car, parked 3 houses down on Maple Street. Carol would let me in for exactly 2 hours. I'd sit on their beige sectional sofa and watch Tyler work on puzzles or build elaborate cities with his Lego blocks. Told him stories about the old days at the Ford plant, about the time I helped build the truck that delivered his birthday cake to the hospital when he was born. Tyler asked me once during that period why I looked worried. "I'm not worried, buddy," I told him. "Just thinking about some grown-up stuff." "What kind of grown-up stuff?" He wanted to know because 7-year-olds think adult problems are as interesting as everything else in the world. "About how much I love spending time with you," I said. He accepted that with the matter-of-fact confidence of a child who's never doubted his loved, and went back to building what he told me was a fishing boat for the 2 of us to use. In the 7th week, Gerald called and said we had everything we needed. He'd drafted a formal letter outlining the $45,000 gift, now documented as a loan given how the funds had been redirected, requesting full repayment. The letter also asserted my rights as a grandparent under Michigan family law, which allows grandparents to petition the court for access when that access is being unreasonably denied. The letter was professional, not angry, just very, very clear about what the documentation showed and what my options were. Nancy had also prepared a financial summary showing every transfer, every date, the secret account, the amounts. A clean picture of what had happened to $18,000 of money I'd given to help my son's family. I put both documents in a large manila envelope, called Tim and asked if I could come by Saturday, same as usual. He said sure, no problem. I drove to Warren with the envelope on my passenger seat, right next to Tyler's early Christmas present, a model of the Mackinac Bridge we could build together. Carol answered the door wearing her usual smile, the polite one she uses for difficult neighbors and uninvited salespeople. "I have something for Tim," I said when she started explaining that Tyler was having a rough day and maybe I should keep the visit short. "He's watching the Lions game and it's really not the best. It'll just take a minute," I said. "Could you get him for me?" Tim came to the door, saw the envelope, and I watched something shift in his expression. Fear, maybe. Or relief that whatever had been building was finally here. I handed him the envelope. He opened it right there in their doorway, Carol standing behind his shoulder, and read the first document. I watched the color drain from his face. Not guilt at first. Confusion. He read the financial summary, then he looked up at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Like someone had just explained a joke he'd been missing for years. "Dad, what is this?" "It's a letter from my attorney," I said, "and a financial report from my accountant. I think you should read both of them carefully. Then I think you should have a conversation with Carol." He looked at her. She looked at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. "I don't know what has told you," she started. "Carol," I said quietly, "the account is documented. The transfers are documented. All of it. I wasn't angry. That's important to understand. I was calm the way you get calm when you've spent 7 weeks thinking about something and decided exactly how you're going to handle it." Tyler appeared at Tim's side, slipping under his arm. "Hi, Grandpa Vince," he said, looking up at me with those gray-blue eyes that reminded me so much of Linda. "Hey there, buddy," I said. Tim read both documents twice, right there in the doorway. Carol tried to explain the transfers as college savings, as investment planning, as a misunderstanding. But the documentation was clear, and after a while she stopped talking. "Come inside, Dad," Tim said finally. 6 months later they were separated, and I was picking Tyler up every Saturday morning for fishing trips to the lake near my house. We look for what he calls the monster base because that's what I told him lived in the deep water near the fallen tree, and I've never corrected him because his version sounds better than mine. Last weekend, Tyler caught his first real keeper, a largemouth bass that bent his little fishing rod almost in half. He called me on my cell phone before Wed even gotten the fish in the cooler, so excited he could barely get the words out. "Grandpa Vince, I got him. I got the monster bass." I took a picture of him holding that fish, grinning like he'd just discovered buried treasure, and I sent copies to Tim and kept one for myself. It's sitting in a frame on my kitchen windowsill now, right next to the photo of Linda holding Tyler in the hospital the day he was born. She would have made such a fuss over that fish. Would have called everyone in her address book, probably would have insisted I mount it on the wall. I like to think she was watching from wherever she is now, laughing at both of us covered in lake water and fish slime, proud as anything of her grandson and his first real catch. What I learned is this: when someone tries to charge you admission to your own family, that's not love. That's a business transaction, and family should never be for sale. Document your generosity. Trust but verify. And remember that grandparents have rights too. Not just in your heart, but in the courts where it matters when push comes to shove.